Floodwater came pouring down the stairs into the New York City subway again this month. Rain was falling over parts of the city at up to 2 inches an hour. New York's sewers were built to drain 1 3/4 inches an hour. That gap, a quarter of an inch, is the entire reason America's largest city keeps going under. And when the sewers lose, the water does not politely sit in the street. It goes down, into the basement apartments, where tens of thousands of New Yorkers sleep below street level, in rooms with one door and one small window. For years, ever since 11 people drowned in those basements during Hurricane Ida, New York has been promising this would never happen again. But on Saturday, the 18th of July, 2026, the water came down the subway stairs anyway, and the city had already watched it coming. Coming up, the exact number that decides whether New York drains or drowns, and the 2 basement deaths that show what happens when that number is beaten. But first, what actually happened on the 18th. The day before the storm, New York City Emergency Management issued a public weather alert and activated the city's flash flood emergency plan. By 25 minutes past 9 on Saturday morning, the National Weather Service had a flash flood warning in effect over the city. The forecast had called for 1 to 1.5 inches of rain across New York. That is an unremarkable summer soaking, but thunderstorms do not spread themselves evenly, and these ones did something forecasters dread. They trained. Storm after storm rolled over the same neighborhoods, one behind another, like carriages of a train crossing the same point of track. In those isolated pockets, the totals climbed to between 2 and 4 inches. And crucially, the rain came down at rates of 1.5 to 2 inches an hour. Hold on to that number because it is the whole story. Across Manhattan, Brooklyn, and Queens, roads went under. Drivers were stranded in water that rose faster than traffic could move, and travel across the entire region seized up. Then the water found the openings it always finds. It poured into parts of the subway system. At Canal Street, in lower Manhattan, rainwater rushed toward the subway entrances and reached parts of the platform area, water running down the stairs into the tunnels beneath the city. Subway service was delayed or rerouted across multiple lines. The subway is uniquely exposed to this, and not by accident. Much of the system runs directly beneath the streets, and every stairwell, grate, and ventilation opening at street level is, in a flood, an inlet. Water does not have to break in. It is simply invited down by gravity through the same openings that let millions of people in and out every day. Once it reaches the tracks, the third rail, and the signals, service has to stop, whether or not the tunnel itself is damaged, which is why a single hour of hard rain can freeze the movement of a city of 8 million people. And the rain was not the only threat in the sky that day. The same storms were capable of straight-line wind gusts of 50 to 70 miles an hour. Forecasters warned an isolated tornado could not be ruled out, and a tornado watch was posted for parts of New York and New Jersey before it expired. What makes the timing of all this so striking is what the city had just been through. The storms arrived after days of wildfire smoke and heat, a stretch where New Yorkers had been told to stay inside because the air itself was unhealthy, and then told to stay inside because of the temperature. Smoke, then heat, then flood, in a single stretch of summer. One city, 3 separate hazards, back to back. Emergency planners have a name for this kind of run: compounding disasters. Each one on its own is survivable. Stacked together, they wear down the same systems and the same people. The elderly told to shelter from the smoke, then from the heat, then from the water, all in the space of a few days, in apartments that may have no air conditioning and no way out if the basement fills. So why does the largest, richest city in the United States flood like this? The answer is one number, and it is the most important fact in this entire story. New York City's sewer system is built to handle about 1 3/4 inches of rain per hour. That is its design capacity. Below that, the system works, the water drains away, and the city stays dry. Above it, the water simply has nowhere to go. There is no reserve, no emergency setting, no way to make the pipes wider during a storm. Once rain falls faster than 1 3/4 inches an hour, New York begins to fill up. On the 18th of July, rain fell at up to 2 inches an hour. The city was beaten by 1/4 of an inch, and New York is built to lose that fight. This is a city of concrete, asphalt, and rooftops. A surface almost entirely sealed. In a forest or a field, heavy rain soaks into soil. In Manhattan, virtually none of it does. Every drop that lands runs off immediately into a drainage network laid out for a version of the city and a version of the climate that no longer exist. When that network is overwhelmed, the water follows gravity to the lowest opening it can find. In New York, the lowest openings are subway stairwells and basement doors. That brings us to the deaths, because the human cost of this arithmetic has already been paid twice. Go back to September of 2021, when the remnants of Hurricane Ida reached New York. In some areas, rain fell at a record 3.5 inches per hour. Set that against the sewer capacity of 1 3/4 inches, and the scale of it becomes clear. The rain arrived at exactly double the rate the city could drain. There was no scenario in which New York stayed dry. At least 13 people died in New York City that night, 11 of them drowned in flooded basements. In the analysis of Ida's death toll, drowning in unregulated basement apartments was the single most common circumstance of death, around 71% of the storm's injury deaths in the city. To understand why a basement apartment becomes a trap, picture the physics. The room sits below street level, so it is the first place the water goes and the last place it leaves. The flooding does not creep in. It arrives in minutes through the door, the window well, the drain. As the water rises outside, it presses against a door that opens inward, and a few feet of water pushes with enough force that a person inside cannot pull it open. There is often one small window, high on the wall, sometimes barred. And these apartments exist in their thousands precisely because New York is unaffordable. Many are unregulated, unregistered, unknown to the city, which means no one official even knows how many people are down there when the water starts to rise. The rescues that night showed exactly how narrow the margin is. In Queens, video captured NYPD officers submerging themselves in the black water of a flooded basement, going under repeatedly to try to reach the people trapped inside. That is what a basement flood demands of a rescuer. Not a ladder or a boat, but going down into a filled room in the dark, feeling for someone who is already beneath the surface. In the majority of those cases, the rescuers arrived to a room that was already full. That was 2021. And here is what makes New York's situation a story rather than a storm. It happened again. On the 30th of October, 2025, another storm hit the city and shattered rainfall records that had stood for generations. Central Park recorded 1.85 inches, breaking a record from 1917. LaGuardia Airport recorded 2.09 inches, obliterating a mark set in 1955. Newark recorded 1.99 inches, breaking another 1955 record. Consider how long those records had stood. The Central Park mark had survived 108 years, set before the Second World War, before the Great Depression, before most of the modern city existed. The airport records had held for 70. All three fell on the same day. Wind gusts hit 53 miles an hour. There were 147 reports of downed trees by 4 in the afternoon. Ground stops were ordered at JFK, LaGuardia, and Newark. And NJ Transit suspended its North Jersey coastline. And 2 people died, both in basements. A 39-year-old man was found in a flooded basement on Kingston Avenue in Crown Heights, Brooklyn. And in Washington Heights, at West 175th Street and Broadway, 43-year-old Juan Carlos Montoya Hernandez was found in a flooded boiler room basement. 4 years after Ida, in the same city, in the same kind of room, for the same reason. Now line the events up. Ida in 2021, 13 dead, 11 in basements. October 2025, century-old records broken, 2 dead in basements. July 18th, 2026, the subway flooding again, roads submerged, the emergency plan activated. And barely a week later, on the 27th of July, New York City and Philadelphia were once again placed at the center of a serious flash flood threat across the Northeast. This is no longer a series of freak events. It is a pattern, and it is accelerating. The science behind it is uncomfortable but simple. A warmer atmosphere holds more water vapor, and when it releases that moisture, it tends to release it in shorter, more violent bursts. The total rainfall in a year may not change dramatically, but the way it arrives does. Instead of an inch spread across a day, a city gets 2 inches in an hour. And a drainage system is not judged on the yearly total. It is judged on the worst hour. That is the precise mechanism by which infrastructure that worked perfectly well for decades starts failing in a city that has not changed, because the rain has. So what can actually be done? Rebuilding the sewer network beneath a 100-year-old megacity is a project measured in decades and tens of billions of dollars, and it cannot be done ahead of the next storm. The faster interventions are smaller and less dramatic, expanding areas that can absorb water, adding storage to hold the peak of a downpour, upgrading the specific choke points where subway stations flood, and above all, reaching the people in basement apartments before the rain starts, so that no one is asleep below street level when the water arrives. Every one of the 13 basement deaths in these 2 storms was a person who could not get out of a room in time. That is what New York is really fighting. Not the rain itself, but the clock. The handful of minutes between a downpour beating 1 3/4 inches an hour and the water reaching a door that will not open. For more disaster reports built on the real numbers and the real science, without the exaggeration, subscribe, and never miss the next one. Because the number has not changed. New York's sewers still drain 1 3/4 inches an hour, the storms keep arriving at 2, and the basements are still there, still occupied, still the lowest point the water can reach. On the 18th of July, the city got away with soaked roads and a flooded subway. The next time those storms train over the same neighborhoods, the difference between a bad commute and a body in a basement will come down, once again, to 1/4 of an inch of rain.